Hi, welcome to Box on the Box, Rock and Celluloid, Bot for short. So something I don't normally do on here is I'm going to do an album review. So obviously big heavy metal fan, and one of my favourite bands is Saxon, or is Saxon. And they've just released a new album, Carpe Diem, Seize the Day. Yeah, I finding myself enjoying it a bit more than I usually do, the most recent Saxon albums. And I thought I wanted to have a little look into why that is, but just a quick potted history. Obviously, Saxon key new Robin band, and you can kind of divide their career into kind of four eras. Really, there's a classic era, which starts in 1979 with the Saxon album, and then they make Wheels of Steel, Strong Along, Demon and Leather. Three key new Robin albums on the back. On the trot, they do a live album, Eagles Landed. Their drummer Pete Gill leaves. They get Nigel Glockler in, and they make another great record, Pound the Glory, which tends to get overlooked a little bit in their classic run. And then they, that's the sort of heavy era, and then they kind of make an attempt to go a bit more commercial, like a lot of bands. And although the Crusader album from 1984 has got a great album cover, very power metal, and the title track's a classic, it's not really good and doesn't do quite as well for the band in England. And this is, I call this their second phase. There's Crusader, Innocence Is No Excuse, Rocks the Nations, and Destiny. All these are more commercial, with more polished production, or Rock the Nations is an attempt to get back to the more classic sound. Innocence Is No Excuse album's really good, but the production is a bit too lightweight, and it doesn't have the desired effect for the band. The final album of this era, Destiny, contains a great cover of Ride Like the Wind, but by this point the classic lineup started to dismantle. Obviously Pete Gill's gone, the original drummer, even though Glockler is a superior drummer. Steve Dawson's left, who's their classic bass player. Then they kind of do the Solid Ball of Rock album, which is a kind of attempt to kind of get back a heavier sound and get a foothold back in Europe, which it does. And this kind of saves the bacon, really, because it's basically dead for them in the UK by this point, and they've become very much a European band. Then they will follow this fairly quickly with Forever Free, which treads water, really, and Dogs of War, and then Graham Oliver leaves. So that's kind of like the third phase. They've got the new album phase, the commercial phase. The third phase is kind of them treading water, working out where to go. When Graham Oliver leaves, they basically have the lineup of Paul Quinn and Biff Byford. Nibs Carter, by this point, is the established bass player, and they're getting Doug Scarrett on guitar. They will have various drummers dropping in and out, but Nigel Glockler will come back. He has a couple of periods out of the band. And what they start to do is establish themselves with a more power metal sound, and this begins on their Unleash the Beast album. Unleash the Beast, Metalhead, Killing Ground, and Lionheart. It kind of finds its summation in the 2004 Lionheart album, where they utilise the European power metal production of Charlie Beaufind, the influence of the power metal sound, but fuse it with a very English, very new album influence. And that for me is one of their best albums. And this sees a bit of an upswing. They do a documentary in 2006, Get Your Act Together, and it gets them back on British TV. And like I say, there's an upswing in their fortunes. They do the Inner Sanctum album. For the first time ever, they start touring the UK, bigger venues to support Motorhead. And the last time I saw them, they were playing the City Hall in Newcastle, so playing like 1,000-seater, 2,000-seater venues. They do Inner Sanctum, Inner Labyrinth, Court of Arms, Sacrifice. All these are kind of similar. They don't quite hit the heights of Lionheart, but they maintain their level at the Inner Sanctum, Labyrinth album, Call to Arms, Sacrifice. They're all kind of 6 out of 10 albums, but the Sacrifice album does have one difference. It's a bit heavier in sound, and Andy Sneap mixes it, so he doesn't produce it, but he mixes the album, and obviously he's renowned for his work with Accept and Judas Priest. And this begins a good production partnership again, similar to the one they had with Charlie Beaufind in the early noughties. And then the last 3 albums, or the last 2, there was definitely an upscale. They start working with Andy Sneap. The sound of the albums were getting better. The album Battering Ram, just looking at the track listing here, title track was great. Devil's Footprint, Queen of Hearts, really lovely track on the end called Kingdom of the Cross, and some good tracks in the middle. So a solid, 7.5 out of 10. And then that continued as well, Thunderbolt. I was listening to this album today, and I was quite surprised how strong it was. A couple of naff tracks, Predator and Sniper. The title track's not great, but it's good. But some really cool tracks, like they played Rock and Roll Nosferatu, Secret of Flight, Roadie Song, Speed Merchants. And so like I say, been a bit of upward swing. Now, what happened was I was supposed to release this album, I think, in 2021. But obviously it got postponed because of the pandemic, and they actually did an album of cover versions. And I think it's benefited. I think Saxon have tended to put an album out every 2.5 years. And I'm just looking, Thunderbolt came out in February 4 years ago. So having that break and probably a little more time to fine tune things, I think has benefited this album. So it opens with the title track, Carpe Diem, Seize the Day. I checked out the video for this a while ago, and I've got to be honest, I wasn't that impressed. But I went back to it, and it's got something. There's something better about the guitar sound. The guitars have typically been very raspy. Really good guitar sound, but quite trebly. But Andy Sneap seems to kind of smooth things off on this outing. I think it benefits from that. And like, yeah, it's typical of Saxon singing about Romans, and the video's got them at the Roman wall. And this album sees a kind of return to those themes we were covering on an album like Lionheart, very themes of English history and so on. So I think this is a solid opening track. The Carpe Diem as a hook kind of works. For me, it didn't at first, but it kind of is an earworm. And then it goes into Age of Steam. So this is like a classic Saxon lyric. Basically, you could see it as almost like a sequel to Princess of the Night. So if Princess of the Night, Star Wars, then this is the prequel. So it's kind of like talking about the Age of Steam taking over the horse and cart, the birth of the industrial age. Again, such a Biff lyrical thing to do, but it works really well. I would say this is a superior track to the title track. Again, on this album, the riffs are good. They don't, I've heard better riffs by Saxon, but I think Biff's lyrics and hooks are drawing the listener in on this. Plus the songs have got slightly tighter arrangements than the last couple of albums. On this album, all the tracks are kind of over 3 to 4 minutes, and yeah, there's a couple of more epic tracks, slightly longer. But that's it. Then the third track is Dam Busters, 3 minutes 20. No prizes for guessing what this is about. Of course, those great men who did the Bounce the Bombs into the Dam. Again, quintessentially British English lyric. I think that's the thing with Saxon. Although in Great Britain, they're very much an English heavy metal band. They're very much a Flag of St George band. This is a really good track. Again, riff's a little cooler on this, but again, it's kind of Biff's lyrics and hooks that stand out, and the simplicity and the firmness of the production. Then there's the Pilgrimage. Again, this is kind of like Crusader or Lionheart. It's that type of lyric. It's really good, almost kind of Hell's Bellsy type chord sequence. This is the longest track on the album, 6:28. In actual fact, I'm looking at the video here, so it's probably a bit shorter than that. But it's a really good track. Quite a lyrics. It's all about pilgrim's journey, religion, history. I should say Biff's vocals are really good on this. I would possibly his vocals are better than the last few albums. It's quite remarkable, really. He's 71 this year. He's probably 70 when he's done this vocal. Possible reason for that is he hasn't had as heavy touring schedule due to the pandemic, and that's given his vocals a rest. Yeah. You've got to hand it to him, we really are in uncharted territory with these guys, Biff Byford, Rob Halford. It's got to be said, Biff's range is greater than Halford's. He can still do the screams, he can still sing. If he's not on copy keys on the originals, he's probably only tuning down a half step. Then we've got Remember the Fall, and so this was the track that really kind of hooked me more into the album. This is the second single. I really like the lyrics on this. It's all about the pandemic. Biff's always done that, written from the news and what's happening. There's a track he did, If I Were You, If I Was You, I think, off the, they did Saxon, off the In a Sanctum album, which is all about gun crime. Yeah, it's got a cheesy video, but I like it. Again, the riff's pretty ordinary, quite kind of power and glorious, but I don't know, Andy Sneap, he's harnessed a really good guitar sound. I imagine he's taken the best takes and cut and pasted them and done some repetitions to get it really solid. Obviously, I should say the guitars are excellent throughout the album. Doug Scott and Paul Quinn are excellent, so, they don't need help, but, it's just a way to get a more effective punch to recording the drum sounds. Glockler's amazing. Glockler is, 68 now? He might be 69 this year, and again, you've got to hand it to him. His drums are really punchy. Better than, if you had to pick a comparison, better than Nico McBrain's, and easily as good or better than Scott Travis is. So, great stuff. And that's a really good chorus. I think this is my favourite track on the album. Next up is Supernova. Taking a little dip here. This is where kind of the kind of Phrygian sounding riffs, start to come in on the album and get a little samey. I would say there's two types of riff on this album. There's that type of riff, and there's your classic kind of Pound the Glory, what I call an evolved Smoke on the Water type riff, where they're kind of in A, and getting that kind of blue note, the flat five sound into the riff. But Supernova's a good track. Then another really good track, Lady in Grey. This is kind of quite epic. It's got really good kind of orchestrations on it. I think it's got some piano on it. I could be wrong, or is that a Pilgrimage? Again, the production stands out on this. There's a kind of expanse, like Andy Snoop's been building across the last two albums, and it feels like they've just widened the sound a bit. And it feels like Saxon's, before it felt like Snoop's production didn't sort of stand out individually as much. It felt like maybe he'd used a kind of template for Saxon's sound, whereas with this, it's kind of, it's kind of fine-tuned it more to me. So Lady in Grey's a really good track. Then the next track's a bit of a filler, All for One. It's about the Musketeers, but again, I think Biff writes a really good hook, harmonies, and it comes through. So again, not a decent filler track. And then another really strong track. This is probably maybe the equal best track on the album. It's Black as the Night. This is really heavy. It's got a really chunky riff. This is quite different for the band in that respect. It's got a 4 minutes and 13. Again, really good atmosphere on the lyrics. Maybe this is the one with piano. Don't quote me. I've had 5 plays of this album. So, but the production stands out, and it's again a really good hook. And then the album finishes with the shortest track, 256, Living on the Limit. So this is a classic Saxon trope, and I'll just every Saxon album has some vehicle related thing, and obviously it's a motorbike song, and yeah, it could be really stock, but yeah, it's good. I mean, on the first Saxon album, we had Stallions of the Highway, then you had Motorcycle Man and Wheels of Steel, Car and Motorcycle on the Wheels of Steel album. Strong Arm of the Law, well, that was about getting pulled over the title track while you're driving a car. And then Denim and Leather, you got Princess and Night, which is about a train. Play It Loud, I think that's about playing your music in your car, maybe Out of Control. Midnight Rider, that's about the band's truck. Then you've got to go Pound of Glory, you've got Red Line, which is a motorbike song. Crusader, actually, and that was where I was saying the sound started to change. That doesn't actually have a vehicle song on it, and neither does Innocence is No Excuse. Rock the Nations as well, that doesn't have a vehicle song on it. And neither does Destiny. I don't think, no, it doesn't. And I'm just trawling through this because it's important. Solid Ball of Rock, yeah. Crash Dive, okay, that's a plain song, so we're kind of getting back into vehicles. Forever Free, well, the title tracks must be about a motorbike. Dogs of War, Big Twin Rolling, yeah, it's another vehicle song. And then we've got, Unleash the Beast. Actually, there's no vehicle songs on that. Although it has got Terminal Velocity, which is about parachuting, so you have to go up in a plane to do that. Metalhead, there's no vehicle songs on that. Killing Ground, actually there's no vehicle songs on that either. And then you get to Lionheart, which has Man and Machine, which is about Donald Campbell on Lake Coniston. So I'm just looking over here. And then you've got Need for Speed on the Inner Sanctum album. Obviously that's probably about a car or a bike. Yes, you've got Slow Lane Blues, which is about getting done for speeding. So kind of like Strong on the Law, that's on Into Labyrinth. Call to Arms has got Afterburner, which I think's about planes. So we've got planes, cars, trains, and motorbikes. Battering Ram, Hard and Fast. I mean, that might be probably about a car or a bike. And then... hold on, I've got to go back to Sacrifice. I missed that. That's got the hilarious one. It's got Warriors of the Road. This actually has samples of Ayrton Senna and so on in the Grand Prix. And Wheels of Terror, which is about tanks. Actually, they've got tanks into it. So, yeah, we can add tanks into vehicles. And then you've got Speed Merchants, which is probably either a car or motorbike on. And The Secret of Flight, which is about learning to fly in planes. On the Inspirations album, they did Speed King as well by Deep Purple as a cover. So sorry to waffle on there, but yeah, this is an important thing with Saxon, is to have a car, a motorbike, or a car, or a train, or a tank, or a plane song, and that is the last track in the song. Okay, so overall, I think there's something maybe just a little more focused, a little more catchy about this than the last two albums, which are good, definitely an upswing. So it's certainly, I'd give Battering Ram Thunderbolt 7.5. Let's give this an 8. It is getting good traction. I think the reason for that is, I think we've all been having a hard time, and we're starting to go back to gigs and that. And I think the postponement of this album has actually really helped it. It's come out and it feels a little fresher. It feels like, great, there's a Saxon album. There's someone playing traditional British English heavy metal with traditional British themed lyrics, and it's something we can get our, can't even do it, kind of get our horns going to, down the front. Yeah, it's about sticking to what they know and doing it well. Also, the album cover's pretty cool. I haven't got a copy of this yet, but you'll see it on the thumbnail. It kind of touches base really with the very first Saxon album. This is their 40th anniversary of recording this album, but it got postponed, of course. But it's got the red logo, which goes all the way back to the first Saxon album, and then the sort of Roman imagery. I didn't like the cover at first, but now I do actually. I think it's one of their best covers for a while. So all in all, and if you go online, you'll see the packaging, and it's got a really nice Roman crest, really good sort of red pages with the lyrics on in really nice typeface, a really cool band photo in the middle. So it's quite simple graphics, but I just think it makes a strong statement. This isn't reinventing any wheel. It's kind of coming out of the abnormality we have. Saxon are going like, yeah, it's business as normal, and that's no bad thing. So thank you, Saxon, and yeah, it's quite a long review, and I talked about other things, but I hope you enjoyed that, and see you again. Cheers.